my thoughts on Pathbuilder 2, which is the follow-up version for obviously the original version for the first edition of Pathfinder for second edition. It's something that has really helped the players of my current game, and also within games that are outside of the streaming that I've done, either as one-shots or other things like that, and even just for myself, partly to experience characters, because coming from first edition, coming from playing other different game types, it is very different in terms of the way in which it is done, and there is a lot to learn. So I'm just going to sort of go through the different aspects and talk about what I like, things I might change, which is very little actually. It's quite amazing in terms of actually the breadth of the program, given how quickly it was released after the actual release of the game. The only reason I'm doing this as a review is because, according to one of the other people in the podcast, there is no one else really using it, so it is quite a either underused or unknown platform, or possibly everyone's just so amazed by it and they didn't even think they needed to review it. So again, obviously when you load the program up, you're presented with this screen: either load or add new character. At this point I'm going to create a new character. It's just recently been updated, as you might have seen on that screen, with the new etc that was applied. And again, obviously you can see there is only the currently released classes. There is none of the playtest version. Very much, again, you can click a button and it takes you straight to see the actual official Archives of Nethys, and again can go back with a quick click of the button, and it'll allow you to go back to the classes. So I'm going to pick very stereotypically, go with the fighter. You click create and straight away it comes up with some options, and those options are quite varied in terms of autosave, always a useful feature. If you're not quite finishing the character, it will let you know that. It can also tell you about spellbooks, separating Adventurers Kit into individual items. I personally always tick that one, otherwise you have to remember what's in there, and that is a pain. Again, one of the things you can optionally allow if your GM says so. I would allow it because I don't think it's particularly game breaking in the sense of how it runs, is the allow half orc or half elf for all ancestries. Again, that's personal preference of the GM and I can't go against that one. The game mastery dual classing, which is the option created in the GM guide that allowed for people to have multiple classes under one character if there was only a couple of people in the game. So that is another option there. And again, all the different sources that are currently available, which are there, and I'm not going to add anything else in except for the separate Adventurers Kit items. Now again, you're presented with this. Initially, first thing that you can do is set a name. Derek, we'll go with that for his name there. There we go. Straight away it's put on there. One of the things to note, this is only available on Android, so you cannot get it on an iPhone or any other platform. Again, it's automatically selected to the fighter class. You can select the ancestries, and very nicely, rather than just give you the different actual ancestries, if you click across each one, it does tell you a little bit more about what actually comes with that and the basics that are there, as well as languages and any special abilities. So we'll go with a name. Strange choice for a fighter. But next you've got this box underneath where it says level 1, the ability boost, class skill and skill training, which are the ones that I found that people have strangely missed when they've been creating a character. So ability boost, it literally lists everything out about where you get things from. Strength, constitution, charisma. Again, it depends on the build you're building. One of the things that is slightly different in terms of but compared to point buy for first edition is that anything under 18 you automatically gain 2 different points on that one. Anything over 18 you gain only 1 point. So there we go. Very bad fighter at this point, although actually very healthy fighter, but he's very well rounded, shall we say. You can also allow voluntary flaws and boost other scores in that way if that's something you want to do as a player. again, consult your GM because it's always useful to do that. You can completely override it and put your own ones in if the GM again has specified specific scores or giving you an option or has decided to not run with the system that's been applied for 2nd edition. So there is my terribly weirdly balanced fighter who's a gnome, sadly. After that you get the bonus to different skills that are based on your background, which again I forgot to show, I apologise. So here we go, here are there's loads of them, and again there will be more coming with the release of the Advanced Player's Guide, as well as obviously the new classes, new ancestries, and all the other bits that are going on in there. With Tiefling, for example, is something that you can take. And here we have Martial Discipline. It tells you which your boosts are going to be. So it's a very well-informed app. And after you've sort of chosen, I've gone with Barkeep, you've then got your general skills as well, which you will automatically put in the ones that you have, and then you can choose as many as it tells you at the top, which was 4 originally. There we go, there's 4 ones that no self-respecting fighter would probably take, but again, this is just a showcase of how to use the app and whether it's worth using. After that, you need to choose your ancestry feat. Another thing that's very good, in very clear colours, it tells you which ones you are not allowed based on your current build. Again, same thing with everything else. Click on something, it tells you why you're allowed it or what it does, which is always very useful. It also tells you what feat level, which is that number on the right hand side. As you can see as you go down, some are 5th level, some are 13th. They're not ordered, I guess, but by feat level they are ordered by alphabetical order, which personally it would be quite useful if they're ordered by feat level, as it has been a couple of times where I've been very excited about one I could take, but then I can't take it for several levels. So we'll just take Life-Giving Magic, which is a gnome based one, which again for this one it tells you when and how. So we select that, job done, it gives you that. Heritage, again the types of gnomes, Fey Touch gnomes, and then you have class feats, which again based on the type of build we'll have a power attacking gnome, and it tells you obviously the feats of that and the features, which is amazing. And then obviously same thing happens for every level, and when you get to 5th level you get your ability boost, your skill increase, and so on and so forth all the way through to level 20. It does very much the same thing all the way through, which is fantastic. After the build page, which is the basics page, you then have your about page where you set your level, which means that you can export the character at different levels. A slight change over Pathbuilder, the original one where you had to set it on the first page and put in the amount of XP. You can just directly choose the level, which is slightly better and means you don't have to remember how many XP would I have to be, although that in itself is easier when every level is 1,000 in 2nd edition. The only thing that, again, it doesn't give you an optional menu for the alignment, which might help, but in games where maybe you don't use alignment, it would make things slightly easier there, where you could type in whatever you liked. And again, gender and all of these, it doesn't give you options, particularly for new players. Deity, it might be a nice addition to give them the different deities and a brief description of who they were, although this is something that, again, Archives of Nethys you can find quite easily. Languages, done much better in that sense, where it does tell you the different languages as well as who speaks them, as well as separating them into common and uncommon, as well as secret ones. You can also then add custom languages, which if you're playing in a different setting to Galarian might exist, or down to GM discretion. Again, the most wonderful thing. Notes you can add, just general things for you to know about your character, or any reminders about who they are, where they come from. It does tell you here again your size, your speed. All of this information is transferred to the actual character sheet, which I'll show you again. Already it tells me how much AC I have, how much HP I have. I can then add a condition if I want to use the app itself to use my character. It means it updates everything as I do it. As you can see there, it's now changed my fortitude. If I then, if I click here, it shows me drained. I can change it to drained 2, change 3, or I can just get rid of it and it will reset my fortitude to 9. Down here I've got my unarmored, which is again my defense, so I can set the armor. There we go. I'm going to give it to him so we don't get any annoying parts about the buy, which I'll show in a second. I can set the mods, which is slightly different. In the original Pathbuilder it was all under one thing, but this gives you a bit more flexibility, particularly with the way that runes work for upgrading the characters. They are transferable, so a little bit more flexibility in creating the actual armor. There we go. We'll give him major resilience. And it shows me here again how proficient I am, so obviously that's my bonus. From 10 I get an extra 4. It's also comfortable. Set runes, again gives me the option to add those. If I click buy, it's going to tell me I can't afford this item, which is quite useful in terms of you can store how much you have monetarily wise, and then if you try and buy something, oh no, you can't. Again, if you're creating a character at a set level with set amounts of items, maybe you're allowed a couple of second level items, at least then you can work it out based on the right hand side. Again, it tells you the item level. Again, shield, can add shield. There we go. There's my shield. It tells me the stats about the shield and what it does when it's raised, hardness, and what happens if it breaks. After that we then have offense. It tells you a perception skill on this slide, which if you're using it on the app, you might not initially, as a couple of the players you might have noticed if you've listened to the rest of the podcast, might have shown that they weren't sure where things were because they were new to the app. Again, same things before. Add weapon. At the top you've got all the different proficiencies. You've got the type of weapon, whether it's standard, magic or custom, and you've also got whether it's melee or ranged. Slightly more simplified than first edition in terms of the number of weapons, but obviously that's nothing to do with the app. It does make things easier to find. It also does give you the stats straight there as to what proficiency you have, which if you are trying to work things out as to whether you can use a weapon during the game, you can boot up the app and you can add it to your character, and at least it will tell you then and there without having to do research, without possibly having to distract anyone as to what it will do. Particularly if there's a lot of roleplay going on, it's quite a nice thing to find out for yourself without distracting anyone, and can obviously add all the different things to it. It tells you the extra abilities it has, and obviously you can add as many weapons as you like. Apparently I've now got a 10th level weapon for this poor first level character. You've then got, if we scroll across a few more different ones, we've then got which I never really have used. I didn't use in first edition. I haven't used in any system that I've played in terms of how much you can carry. As long as my players aren't Lara Croft with 50 million rocket launchers in their backpack, I'm okay with it. This is where you then add your equipment, whether that be magical or otherwise. I apologise for the constant interruptions from people of an overlay. After that you've then got all the different ones, adventuring gear, and then the different options through wands, staves, magic items, worn or held, and can give them to your character here, and it will automatically across everything update all the different aspects. You then have your skills. This is a page that just gives you an overview. There is nothing you can adapt or change on this page. It does, however, tell you when clicking on it what you can do with that, as well as the number of actions it takes, which is quite useful if you're new to the system or unsure. It is a quick reminder. You then have spells. Obviously this character, the reason I chose what I did was just so I could show you how spells worked, hence why Fey Touch Gnome. Here you can see his DC, his spell attack bonus, which is the attack roll based thing, and then the spells that I can choose from. And again, same thing as before, you can see under Acid Splash, which is fully open, the different options and also the full spell description, which I can add there. After that you then have pets, which unfortunately, as I haven't paid for it, which is the only drawback, then you cannot get the pets side of things. However, I find that companions and things like that, familiars, are much easier to create in second edition, than they were in first edition. As when you try to create anything that way in first edition, it took a lot more in terms of maths, whereas second edition they just have their ability modifiers. So personally I don't know how relevant or useful this part is. If you wish to have the complete and rounded out experience, it is probably worth and useful actually buying. more than happily review that part of the app. But as for me personally, I don't find it useful because I find the second edition companions and familiars system quite intuitive. I don't feel it's particularly relevant. Once you've finished, at this point, Derek, for our character, making sure you've set his level. Again, hero points you can change. It depends how relevant it is. If you're using it in-app, probably very and quite useful to keep track of. Once you click there, it does give you a whole lot of options. Exit to the start page. Obviously, the upgrade and remove will disappear as soon as you do that. You can save the character, save a copy, add in your custom feat choices and custom skill if there is something that your GM has decided is useful or relevant outside of the campaign. After that, you can also, as a new feature that wasn't in the original Pathbuilder and has been very useful for me as a GM to check through to make sure mostly that players have selected everything and not missed an ability upgrade or an extra skill increase. There's a share build link which does appear and does give you the options of how to share it. The other person needs to make sure they have it actually installed Pathbuilder, or it will cause, well, not an issue, but will confuse your phone or Android based device. You can also, again, as you could in the original, you can export the PDF, and I'll just show you what that looks like. There's the stat block, which is the very basic version of just the information, or the slightly prettier PDF version, which looks like your traditional character sheet. And if we just zoom in, again, has all of the information from what you've created, as well as the type of weapon, what's included, the AC, how it's built up, and again, which always people lose, the perception, which is not in the skills anymore, which is obviously a big difference. It then goes through the different extra parts that we've taken, such as the armor, and everything else within here. Obviously, as my character I've just created has an additional extra little innate ability with his spell. It does appear there, and it does tell me how many actions that it needs to use, as well as can be noted, the type of actions it requires. So obviously in this case it's somatic and verbal, so that is quite useful. That is the end of me explaining what Pathbuilder is. I hope it's been useful, and I hope that it explains what it does and why I think it's a really good app to get hold of for you. If you have any questions or any further thoughts, please do feel free to message me or message on the podcast. Obviously the contact details are at the bottom of the stream there. And good evening.